Hello, my name is Veronica Cook, and this is my speech for week 4. This is my husband, my audience, Stephen Cook. The topic of my speech today is the use of new technologies within older and newer generations. The purpose of my speech is to explain how there is a generation gap between the way that older generations and newer generations use technology. The development of new technology has changed the way younger people and both older people interact with each other. iPads, smartphones, and Facebook are all forms of newer technologies that have increased the way we communicate with one another. Which ones would you consider yourself most familiar with? Or is each method foreign to you still? If you answered that you're pretty familiar with these forms of technology, you're probably from the younger generations who use Facebook and texting as a way of interacting with each other on a daily basis. However, if they're still foreign forms of technology to you, you're probably from the older generations and you're still adapting to these. Whether you're from the older or new generations, new devices and technologies are being incorporated in the average individual's life because they have become a key component in the way society functions today. In the 1990s, technologies began advancing into different methods of communication, such as the cell phone and emailing. Generations before the 90s were used to communicating through wired telephones, receiving communication through radio and through television. However, once the internet and cell phones age boomed, newer methods of communication quickly became a crucial part in how we communicate today. One of the ways that communication has changed, even since the 90s, is the way that college and high school students prefer to communicate. Students prefer communicating texting over emailing nowadays. According to Dr. May from the University of Texas, emailing has become an age method of communication. Dr. Eliasov from the University of California also says that students think that emailing is, quote, too slow compared to texting. For college students, having a smartphone is the most preferred source for receiving important information for class. Also, Facebook, Twitter, and text are the newest forms of communication amongst many colleges and universities. Although newer forms of technology exist for communication, the older generations view them slightly different than the younger generations do. For the older generation, keeping up with the latest trends online can be difficult. Virtual communication, for one, is overexposure to many of them. The lack of privacy is an annoyance, and the older generation does not see the need to put personal information on the internet, but they are becoming more accustomed to this trend as it is becoming a more popular form of communication. The younger generation views social networking such as MySpace and Facebook and YouTube all as tools for success, differently than the older generation might view them. Many times nowadays, people from the younger generation view those forms of social media as ways to expose their businesses and expose them if they are good in talents or other things that they might want to show to the public. The demand for new technologies will continue. The younger generation is encouraging businesses to continually develop newer technologies. According to the New York Times, major companies in Japan, like Sony and Panasonic, are fueled by technology entrepreneurs who are stepping up their game. More uses of the internet are also developing. Business and social media sites continue to influence society to interact online, and new technologies force the older generation to adapt to those. Buying and selling through the internet is now a popular form, and online dating, listening to music on mobile devices, and watching television shows on iPads are among the new forms of entertainment technologies. The new era of technology and how society communicates is one that both the older and newer generations have and still are adapting to. Those born in the baby boom era grew up in a time when flash drives were becoming the new and most convenient form of electronic storage available on the market. Today, children and teenagers view such technologies as odd pieces of equipment of the past. According to the CBS News 8 report on how children in today's society reacted to older gadgets, most of the children did not even recognize a cassette player, film camera, a rotary dial telephone, or the Frogger video game. One child even responded, quote, "We have come a long way." The video clearly shows there exists a generation gap between those who have been raised with knowing about newer technologies and those who are still adapting to them. Just like children adapted to the technologies of their decade 50 years ago, children today are doing the same. As a result of the demand for more advanced and convenient devices on the market, both younger and older generations are having to adapt to them on a continual basis. Many of these devices offer faster ways of communication, such as social networking and texting, and will continue to challenge people of all ages to adapt to them.